Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Libration Nation. This week we are discussing Still Life with Woodpecker by Tom Robbins. This is a love story, kind of. It's about a princess, an outlaw, and a lot of philosophical rambling and a surprise number of Camel cigarettes. Tom Robbins basically asks, how do you make love stay? And the answers are weird, hilarious, and occasionally involve explosives. I'm also so excited about my guest this week. Michael Bickett is an award-winning podcaster with over a decade of experience and 1,000 plus podcast credits. As the founder and COO of Certified Crucial, he helps creators monetize their podcasts through eco-friendly, custom merchandise solutions. Michael is also the founder and CEO of Geeks Under the Influence, an award-winning digital media company and podcast network. He is a mentor for the RVA community of podcasters. He's passionate about making the podcast industry more inclusive and accessible. With expertise in branding, monetization, and community building, Michael is a sought-after speaker on topics like creator-driven merchandise, co-branded deals, and creating equitable opportunities in digital spaces. And since our author this week, Tom Robbins, spent some time here in Richmond, I wanted to pick a drink that is local, so we went with Copper Kettle Distillery Bourbon Whiskey. All right, one last thing before we get started. If you're enjoying the show, please go to wherever you listen and rate and review the podcast. 5 stars only, obviously. And also, if you're so inclined, I would love it if you told 2 friends about Drinks in the Library this week. All right, let's get to it. I'd always wanted to do like some kind of book thing, but I'm like such a chatty Cathy. I can't like sit and just write all day. I much more enjoy doing this end of it. So that's where the podcast started, basically.
That's really where I started with podcasting as well. As I'm a giant geek. I'm really into geek and pop culture stuff, and my friends and I would just get together and drink some drinks and do this, but about Doctor Who or Star Wars or whatever the conversation led us, and that had that inevitable moment of a bunch of like chubby bearded tattooed men talking about Star Wars, being like, this should be a podcast. And that's exactly what happened. And as time went, we made it a little bit more unique than just the guys drinking beer and talking about Star Wars show. And all sorts of other pop culture. And we found our niche. We found our groove with it that was, it's not like it's an unsaturated market, the pop culture conversation shows, but we found what made us special, and that's really the trick. Yeah. And it turned into like my whole career now. So
it's amazing. Yeah, it's so cool. I'm very impressed and very interested.
It sounds more impressive than it seems to me. You know what I mean? Because you can look so professional and look so together as a show, but that's all perception. When you look at it from your end, you know what your downloads are. You know that you're winging it half the time, and you feel like there's that imposter syndrome that every podcaster has that's telling you that they're going to figure out you don't actually know what you're doing. And it's somewhere in between. Like, no, none of us really know what we're doing, because this is, in comparison to other mediums, a relatively new one. Yeah. Absolutely. But you have to give yourself a little bit of credit for the amount of time and energy you put into it without letting it go to your head, and then you become that person that's like, this is the one way you do it.
Right. You know? Yeah. It's always that, well, that's like, what is that? Life is like the medium. The middle is where you need to find it. That's the sweet spot of not being imposter syndrome and not being so overconfident that you just think you know everything.
Yeah, and I think it just comes from a desire to continue learning. I'm sure as a librarian, that's very much part of your thought process, or your want is to continue learning and growing and discovering the nuances of the world. And I think having that kind of spirit protects you from becoming stagnant and also accepting things as truths that aren't. So that's one of my favorite things, is just that lust for knowledge, to continue growing and learning.
Yeah. 100%. Once you stop learning, you start dying, kind of thing.
What's the wise enough to know that you don't know anything, or that's a paraphrase of it's that. I was going to say Diane Kruger, the Dunning-Kruger.
Yes.
Of the ignorant people are the ones they think they know everything, and the actual wise people are the ones that don't want to speak up because they know that they don't.
Right. So 100%. Yeah, but I feel that way. So I guess we got to start in the book, and we'll jump in and out. I can tell you, and I have a lot of similar interests here. So, but I am so excited to be with you today, Mike Bickett.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this book at length in a way that's not annoying the people around me.
Good. No, this is, at length all day. That's what we're here for. And the book is Still Life with Woodpecker by Tom Robbins.
Went to school in Richmond. Tom Robbins, he went to VCU.
Okay.
And I think spent some time in Richmond besides, but he's lived around in several places. Yeah. But there's a special connection to Richmond, which is what made me find him in the first place as well.
Okay, so tell us about that. Like, who were you when you found Tom Robbins?
I originally grew up in San Diego.
Okay.
And so I have family out in Virginia. So before my senior year of high school, my mom moved us out to Waynesboro, Virginia, which, if you're unfamiliar, is this little mountain town with I think 18 or 20,000 people. I'm this punk rock Mohican Southern California kid in the late 90s, bondage pants, leather jacket, the whole deal. And I go to this town where there's one high school and there's 800 students, and the senior class, about 40% don't graduate because they get pregnant or drop out. It's a totally different world.
Yeah.
And then, so I moved back to California for a bit. I realized I have no experience or money and moved back. I come to Richmond for school. And while I'm here, I find my place in Richmond. It's the best of both worlds. It's not as big as San Diego, but the music scene is incredible. The art scene's incredible. It's got the right tone that I was looking for. And along with that tone and that art and that creativity that kind of pours out of Richmond, I find Tom Robbins as I'm sitting at the Village Cafe about 2 blocks from my first apartment in Richmond. And there's this placard on the wall in a booth. And it's an article from the newspaper from years and years before about Tom Robbins, who used to hang out at the Village Cafe and write.
Wow.
And so a lot of his early writing when he was in college, he was doing in the booth I was sitting in.
Oh.
So it felt immediately like kismet, like that I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I fancy myself a creative person, more so than I probably should sometimes. But you can only polish a dick joke so much before it's before you just realize what it is. But I was familiar with him as a writer, but I hadn't spent much time really digging into his stuff, and went on a journey. I started with Skinny Legs and All and Jitterbug Perfume, and of course Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, and then just dug through. And years later, I finally got around to Still Life. And what I loved about Still Life is that it hits on the nature of our place in the world around us and how we engage with it. And that's a big theme in a lot of Tom Robbins' stories, is our relationships with ourselves, but also with the objects around us oftentimes, the people in our lives, and what justifies those relationships. With Still Life, a big theme is love and what love means. It's like Love Reign Over Me and Quadrophenia by The Who. It's like it's woven, this how do you make love stay is this thing that's woven throughout the entire book as the question. And just like at the end of Inception or something, it never really fully answers that question, but it guides you in that direction. And like we were talking about with, if somebody tells you this is the answer, they're wrong. This book does that. It doesn't give you one answer for how to make love stay or what love is. It gives you some ideas, and it lets you play with those ideas and determine how they land with you, like what it means to you. Mm-hmm. And so that was really important to me at the time that I first read it.
Yeah.
And like a lot of books that I've come to revisit as I'm older, it's almost a totally different book for me now as it was when I first read it. Okay. In that I still adored rereading it, but its effect on me is almost, I wouldn't say the opposite of what it was when I was in my 20s, but I can see, just like On the Road with Kerouac, rereading it as an adult and seeing the kind of simplicity that is placed on some of the themes, as well as this like self-congratulatory artistry that's played into it as well. Tom Robbins, this is his third book. This is about a decade after he published his first book. There's a little bit of a like I'm hot shit energy, especially early in the book. That I didn't really, I was like, yeah, absolutely, man, when I was in my 20s. Sure. And now that I'm older, I'm like, look, you've got some great points, absolutely, but calm down.
Yeah.
But I think that almost made me enjoy it more, is being able to gain a new perspective on the story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and there is a lot of that energy when you're in your 20s, because you don't know what you don't know. You think you know everything.
In my teens and 20s, I was I'm still to a degree an activist, but I was out there on the streets all the time. I had the world figured out. I had the solution to all of the world's problems. I was ready to go, and I was going to change the world. And that's so funny to think that some 16-year-old or 18-year-old has figured it all out. Yeah. Is hilarious.
Yeah. But that's like the cycle, though. It's like that's what 16-year-olds and 20-year-olds are like.
Sure, and I think you need to have that time, too.
Yeah,
it's not. Absolutely. I laugh at it now, but I wouldn't be where I am now without having those moments and being able to discover the world the way that I did and realize that I didn't have it figured out and feel regret and shame and embarrassment because I talked a big game or blew myself up to be a bigger champion of the world than I would have been capable of being. Everybody thinks that they're immortal and destined for fame. And I think you need to get a kick in the pants sometimes to really realize like the reality of not that you don't matter, because you do, but like what you can actually do. Not everybody is Bowie.
I wish.
Not everybody is like going to write the great American novel, but that doesn't mean that it's any less worthwhile. Like it's still amazing, the things that we can accomplish, even on a small scale. Yeah. And I'm going on rants here, but I think that's what I appreciate about this book as well, is that it does hit those themes, that it's not about the big moves, the big grandiose moves. Sometimes it's as simple as popping a bottle of champagne in a pyramid, or sometimes it's just the simplicity in which you decide to like look at the world that really makes the difference.
Yeah. Talking about activism is making me think about the protagonist of the story. Is she Princess? Is it Lee Cherie?
Lee Cherie, I think.
Yeah. She's very idealistic, I think, a little bit. What do you think?
That was one of the really big shifts in my perspective, having read it previously to reading it now, is the nature of that character and how she's portrayed. And I say this as somebody that does genuinely love this book. So clearly written by a man. Like it's so fundamentally clear that this was not a woman writer that wrote this female character. It's absolutely the male gaze. There's some of that like manic pixie dream girl dust sprinkled on her as well, where you look at the archetype of the character without giving too much away of the story, is that like she's this displaced princess that's living up in a tower that is the attic of her home. And it's this madman, this like truly free man that shows her the truth of the world, which is that she doesn't have to live by the rules that are placed upon her, that she can find her own truth and her own path and decide what the world is to her. And so it is this like attempt at feminism that was really popular in the late 70s, early 80s of, you see like the exploitation films of the era and even literature at the time, where you've got this idea of it being feminist, but it's like men attempting to feminist. They get close. Like the intentions are good, but it does come off awkwardly sometimes.
Yeah, and now especially 45 years later.
Exactly. And so you do, especially with books like this, you have to read it through that lens of when it was written. This came out in 1980.
Yeah.
So clearly times have changed. And especially some of this descriptive, like sexual stuff that's written and the number of terms for her vagina that, that are in this book is a lot. I did not remember how descriptive some of the language was in this book. So that was one of those, oh, wow, okay, they're getting into it. It was interesting to rediscover. But I did like that she took charge at a point in the book as well of her own destiny. And it was because it was partly due to her separation from this other character that she was able to, that she had to be off on her own and discover her own path. And that's what I choose to glean from the story is that it doesn't really matter how you get started with your journey, as long as you, at one point, you take control of the journey yourself. You know, you don't let other people determine for you where you're going.
Right. Yeah. If you were, like, let's say you're telling somebody who's never read this book about it. So we talked about Lee Shuri. I don't know.
Again, I've read it. I don't think I've ever like pronounced it aloud. So
and then I love her last name is Furstenberg Barcelona.
I love and not even ironically, like I love when a writer decides to just get buck wild with names.
Oh yeah,
it's so much fun. Like the was it Ford Prefect Hitchhiker's Guide thing? Like it's just a good time, and I totally get it. I absolutely have done the same. So
yeah. And so so she's the princess. Who else what is this story about, do you think?
Okay, well, the basic setup of the story is it definitely has like a clickbaity kind of lead in of like, this is a story about a love story that takes place inside of a pack of unfiltered Camel cigarettes.
Yeah.
And what the moon is and what its purpose and how to make love stay is a big theme. And so the suggestion is like, I said in our conversation about what drink, bourbon or whiskey.
Yeah.
And that was misremembering that it was tequila, actually. That was a major theme throughout the book.
Okay.
But I'm not mad because I hate tequila, so whiskey is perfectly fine. But the story is basically about this woman that is ignorant in the sense that she hasn't been able to experience the world the same way a lot of us have. She's been protected.
Right.
She is part of this displaced royal family. And they live away from the world.
In Seattle.
Yeah, in Seattle, which is I think where Tom Robbins lived for a good part of his life as well.
I think so, yeah.
I think he had a really popular radio show out there, like From the Underground or something. But her home is away from the city. There's all these like, I think blackberry bushes that are growing all over. It's very like distant in a way. And so when she does have a chance to be in part of society, she goes for it. It's alluded to that she's very loose with her engagement with men in the story.
Yeah.
In a not so subtle way. And it's very reminiscent of like the Rumspringa kind of thing of you're not given access to the world. So when you do, it's like game on. And so she gets herself in a place where she has experiences that she's not terribly excited about. And she's trying to figure out what she stands for. And so she's an activist. And she has like a Save the Whales shirt that's mentioned multiple times through the story. And she's researching all the world, like about the environment and like how to save the world, how to protect the world, how to make things better. And ends up in Hawaii, which is thus the Hawaiian shirt that I'm wearing, thematically appropriate.
Yeah. I love it.
For this conference where it's basically the biggest minds talking about the important issues.
Yeah.
And where she meets this, for lack of a better term, mad bomber that she accidentally falls in love with. And so it's this continuing conversation through the book about how we engage with the world, whether or not we let the world decide for us who we're going to be and where we're going to go, or if we make our own path. And I think in this reading of it, I think much like Fight Club, the book, is that it's somewhere in between that is the best place to be, is that you being wide open. The love interest is basically an anarchist. Like he's kind of the 1980 version of the Joker from The Dark Knight, where he's like, I'm just going to blow stuff up and I'm going to prevent both the good and the bad from being able to solidify, as he put it. And he doesn't really have a cause besides just keeping everyone on their toes and fighting against the idea of institution. And so it's these two characters finding a balance there between the institution or the path and anarchy, basically. The ability to do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of the conversation in the story is about like kind of where we should land in that. And there's also aliens and redheads galore and it's a wild story. It's tangential as hell. And I think that might be why I'm so drawn to Tom Robbins, because I've always been really appreciative of the like philosophical pop psychologist, like comedic writers, the Vonnegut's and the Palineks. And I appreciate being able to talk about the deep stuff while still not taking yourself too seriously.
Okay.
And I've always felt like an outsider in my life. And it was only in recent years that I discovered it was because I have pretty severe ADHD. Okay. Dual presenting, where I have attentive and inattentive elements of ADHD, which is super fun.
And you were diagnosed?
Yes. Yeah, recently. Diagnosed and like 3 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So late diagnosed. I'm in my 40s. So,
right.
So it was an answer to something that I've been challenged with my whole life, feeling like I just never really quite fit into the world. Mm-hmm. So these writers that play in that space of like, what is reality? Where do we exist in it? What is the point of it all? Mm-hmm. Really connected with me because I always felt like I was on the outside. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm also in love with the Muppets and the X-Men is because it's a story about the weirdos, the ones that never really fit in, that find their own way without completely homogenizing themselves and becoming the thing that they're supposed to be. Yeah. And this story is about that partly. It's about this idea that like, how do you make love stay? There isn't one answer. Mm-hmm. It's suggested at the end, maybe death is the one way you make love stay. But it's this idea that like love itself isn't really what's important. It's the mystery of love that keeps you focused. And me as somebody with ADHD that's driven by novelty, by the mystery, by learning, excitement, the idea that love itself isn't what makes love stay. It's the mystery of why it's there in the first place that really motivates us. Mm-hmm. And so that I really liked that sentiment.
Yeah. And I know there is a lot about this story that's about love, and you mentioned that you quoted some of this in your wedding vows.
Yes.
And I didn't know if this was the right time to bring it up. But you were saying it so eloquently. So
I only got married, first marriage, 43. Uh-huh. So I've been engaged before. I've been in long-term relationships before, but it was never quite the right fit. And part of my journey was figuring out myself, as we all got our stuff we got to deal with. Yeah. I had to become the right person for my partner in life. And fortunately, very shortly after I figured out who that was, I met the partner that I will be spending the rest of my life with, my wife, Amy. Yeah. And she's incredible. And we just fit. Mm-hmm. But I think the reason that we fit is because we don't have an answer to everything. You know, we don't have a specific way that things have to be. We grow together. We give each other the space to grow separately and together. And so there isn't ever you're wrong and I'm right attitude about anything. Yeah. We learn to just try to understand where each other are coming from, and that is the real motivator for our lives. Mm-hmm. And so there were a couple quotes from Still Life that really, for me, embody that idea that like, I don't own you. I don't, there's not this like these caveats that we have to rely on to keep our marriage together. Like, you're here by choice, I'm here by choice. As long as we're both in, then we'll be happy. And putting those artificial barriers, those guidelines, those rules about how things are supposed to be, actually prevent happiness sometimes. And especially as someone with ADHD, one of our things that's for neurodivergence in general is resistance to authority. So if you tell me I have to do things a certain way, I will be like, no, I'm literally doing the opposite of that right now, even though I know it's a terrible idea. So not having these like hard, rigid rules about what a relationship is, what love is, makes me a better partner. Yeah. It makes me able to like be attentive and thoughtful and and vice versa. It's freeing because nobody is trying to force the other person to be a partner a specific way. Yeah. So I did bookmark the couple passages that if that's all right.
I would love that.
this is one that really, I think, embodied the idea of like that there aren't any caveats to love, like, and shouldn't be. And this is from chapter 46. And it's, love is the ultimate outlaw. It just won't adhere to any rules. The most any of us can do is sign on as its accomplice. Instead of vowing to honor and obey, maybe we should swear to aid and abet. That would mean that security is out of the question. The words make and stay become inappropriate. My love for you has no strings attached. I love you for free.
And I was thinking earlier, you were saying, and it's so funny, this theme of this conversation has been, the second anyone tells you they know something or this is the answer, run for the hills. And because I was thinking what you were just saying too, as well as like, I've been with my partner for a long time, and I think sometimes people want to say like, oh, well, this is how you're in a relationship, or
right.
This is what makes it good, and it isn't. You just don't know. Like half the time we're winging it, but it's a choice.
Absolutely.
It's just we're there, we're doing it.
And I have to remind myself sometimes that no relationship is the same as another. Is that we have friends that are very happy and are together, and we adore them, and we enjoy their company. But the way that they do their marriage is different than the way we do our marriage.
Yeah.
And not in any scary way, just minor things. But I have to remind myself that that's what works for them. Like one thing my wife and I do not do is jealousy. We are anti-jealousy, not a thing. And we both would be stressed out by being with a partner who is a jealous person. We do have friends that are in relationships where there's jealousy, and not in a scary way, but that's how they show that they're wanted and that they're cared for, is this like, if anybody looks at you kind of attitude, which I would wither away under. I don't need that kind of stress in my life, but they do. Like that that's better than not having it. And so it's those things that remind me that it's not that there's a right and a wrong way to love a person. It's that there's a right and wrong way to connect with your person.
Yeah. Agreed. Was there another passage
that
you wanted to share?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go for it.
I couldn't settle on passages, and fortunately, because both were not terribly long, I just had two passages read for the wedding. Yeah, this is from chapter 56, and it's, when two people meet and fall in love, there's a sudden rush of magic. Magic is just naturally present then. We tend to feed on that gracious magic without striving to make any more. One day we wake up and find that all the magic is gone. We hustle to get it back, but by then it's usually too late. We've used it up. What we have to do is work like hell at making additional magic right from the start. It's hard work, especially when it seems superfluous or redundant, but if we can remember to do it, we greatly improve our chances of making love stay.
Also beautiful.
Yeah. And I love that what I loved about that part is that it's not this flowery idea of what love is that it suggests that love is work. And that it isn't something that's just completely natural. That you have to remind yourself every day when you get up that this is the person you choose. Like every day you're choosing them. Every day you are making sure that you are being the partner they deserve. Is making love stay by creating that magic every day. Yeah. And it's not hard. It just like exercise. If you get in the habit of doing it, then it doesn't even seem like you're doing it, doing anything. Yeah. And that's something that I feel is more prevalent in this relationship than any other one I've been in, is this, what seems like effortless commitment to one another, whether it be picking up something cute or fun from the store when we go out, or sending each other memes like everybody does. But there's always these like thoughtful things that we're doing for each other because we're thinking about each other all the time. And instead of just thinking about each other and going, oh, that's nice, being compelled to show it, whether it be through like gifts or actions or just saying it. Just there's a compulsion to gush about each other. And it feels so good. Like it's not that I need to be gushed on, but it is lovely to have this other person that you just as much want to show your love for, that is putting just as much work in. Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and it's wonderful to find that too. And so I'm happy for, not everybody gets it. So
no, and
I'm happy for you.
It's a challenge of opportunity for some people. You may not always have the right people in your general vicinity to choose from, but it's also being available to it. Like I said, I've been in long-term relationships previously, and as much as it would be nice to say that it was their fault, in some cases, yes. And in some cases, it was definitely my fault. But more often than not, it's a combination of the two. And that ownership of recognizing what you need to work on for yourself to be more available to love is just as important as finding the right person that fits that. Yeah. And it took a long time for me to figure out how to be the partner that they deserve. And fortunately, my wife showed up at the right time, and I didn't screw that up. Yeah. So.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about, so I always ask, like, what is the vibe of the story? I've read it now. This is an absurdist story.
Big time. Big time. One of my favorite stories from Tom Robbins is the story of basically dishware that goes on a cross-country trip, partly in a like old aluminum camper that's shaped like a turkey. So like this is not someone that writes super realistic stories. It's absurdist, it's exaggerated, it's ridiculous, and I feel like that kind of approach to stories allows you the opportunity to have kind of a deeper dive into the philosophy of existence.
Yeah. Well, it definitely, I mean, you already brought up Vonnegut and Douglas Adams. That's who I was thinking about when I was reading
Definitely,
this.
Yeah. And even injecting himself into the story like Vonnegut does.
Yes. I loved that.
It felt very Vonnegut adjacent when I started reading Robbins. And I don't mean that in a like dismissive way where it's some knockoff or anything. Like, he doesn't write like Vonnegut.
Right.
Vonnegut's a little bit more plain speak with his approach to stuff. And Robbins, sometimes in a great way and other times in sometimes an exhausting way, is very overly playful with his word choices.
Very playful, he is.
And he loves it. He loves imagery and being able to describe, I think at one point he described tears as like an overweight woman leaning out of a window or something. That he loves just being able to pat himself on the back sometimes for like his creative descriptive choices. And sometimes that's amazing. I love that. But also sometimes it's like, I need you to wrap it up a little.
But yeah, no, so the book, if I can't remember, it starts it, but it's like one of the very beginning, or it's like the beginning of the first chapter is him talking about he just bought this new typewriter.
Yes.
The typewriter is like almost a character in the book about what's going on with it. And I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And he's talking about writing the book while he's writing the book.
Absolutely. And I loved that. And it nods to it. And I can see how this thought process lends itself to later stories like Skinny Legs and All. That the typewriter influences the way that he's writing the story. Not in the sense that it's easier or harder to write it on this specific typewriter, and that like the choices that are being made in the story, the language being used or the direction is partly being decided by the typewriter. So he's giving this like illusion of choice in the story development to the object that he's using to write it. And that is a theme that you'll see in a lot of other Tom Robbins stories as well, is this idea of like the choice of our relationship to the objects around us, what they mean, what they are, how we engage with them. And we've all had that experience with, let's say, a car that has a name and has a personality, and you have applied this whole backstory to this object. It doesn't have a brain besides maybe the microchips and computers in it, but it has a personality. It has a temperament that you've applied to it, and you could almost swear up and down sometimes that maybe it does. And so that is a theme that is very present in the story, not just with the typewriter, but also what these items represent to people within the story, like the pack of cigarettes, and how this pack of cigarettes and the pyramids on it are a gateway to an elevated understanding of the world. Is wild, and they're treated almost like these sacred objects that are somehow just like interspersed throughout the world. And if you come across one and you find the significance of it that other people maybe can't see, then that is your way to enlightenment. And it's it's a mishmash of different cultural like touchstones in like Eastern religion mixed with like kind of a like a socialist sentiment that's sprinkled in as well with him. And I do like that concept, is that our world is our reality based on our perceptions. And so by applying personality or anything to the objects around us, how untrue is it that this isn't real? It's our perspective. It's our reality. Like, my car does have a temperament. I'm not saying it is alive, but I'm not saying it isn't. My reality is my reality. It's far different than yours.
Yeah.
And so that space is where a lot of Tom Robbins stories live. Is the nature of reality and what we glean from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've still got a few more questions for sure about it. I did want to ask, like, I guess my question is, like, is there something you wanted to pull out in this conversation that we haven't touched on just yet?
Not specifically, but I think the overarching theme, it was actually just slightly touched on with the last part of the conversation, is that a big thing for me, especially as I get older, is an understanding of perspective. It's actually a podcast that I'm working on right now called Sensory, where it's the whole point of it is to have human stories about our experiences in a way that we can better understand how each other's realities exist. Like that there's all these, it's a combination of all these elements that creates our own realities. It's a mixture of your senses, which there are 8 senses, not 5. And it's stuff that 5 senses are the ones that we pretty much use, but like spatial awareness, for example, knowing that this object is right here, even without looking at it. How your body feels inside of your body versus your awareness of your body outside, your balance, basically. Like, there's a few other things that aren't really discussed. All these things contribute to what we see as reality. But it's not how other people engage with the world. The mixture of nature and nurture, what we've experienced, what we apply to the things that we sense, is as much part of like how our senses perceive them as how our brain processes them based on previous experience. So an example is that language applies to vision in that the shades of, say, blue that you can see are very radically dependent on how many shades of blue and words for blue that you've had experience with in your formative years. So there's cultures that have just warm and cool as a color spectrum, and that's what they see. If you come from a community that doesn't really have blues in nature or around, you're not going to have many words for that. So really, my reality is so fundamentally different than yours.
Yeah.
Because of the colors I see, the way that I connect with the world around me because of my increased or decreased levels of senses with smell or taste or... So,
yeah, no, I'm very curious about this. You were saying like the sensory thing. You were talking about like how your experience within your own body, and I was curious, is that a totally different experience than maybe what like a neurotypical person might have? Okay.
And that was the inspiration for the show that I'm the pilot that I'm currently working on for Sensory, is that once I got the diagnosis, and it was like I had to almost process my entire life up to that point, because now I had like the Rosetta Stone from my life on why I was this way. But it wasn't that I was just bad at being alive. It was that like I just
that's so sad. That's how you felt.
Yes, absolutely. I felt like I was never really able to get it together. I struggled with willpower issues and being flaky and not having trouble really keeping attention to a lot of things. And as I got older, I learned ways of managing that on my own. But having that experience and then also having the diagnosis and like official, like tested therapist ways to deal with it, along with like medication and stuff, it really it was a game changer for me. Wow. And so that really is inspiring an even deeper focus on understanding how fundamentally different our realities are from one another. And I now look at it like we're all in this room together in the dark trying to put together this big puzzle, and each of us has this one little piece. And the only way we're ever going to really see the bigger picture of this puzzle is by working together and trying to understand the pieces that each of us have. So stories like Still Life with Woodpecker, it's in that conversation about our realities, what the world means to us, what's important in our lives, and recognizing that our reality isn't necessarily other people's. And so just to have an understanding of that gives you a better understanding of the world in general.
Yeah.
So.
Who would you recommend this story for?
I feel like people in their 20s and younger, maybe like later high school to early 20s, this is probably going to be the most formative because it is dealing with a lot of conversations about who you are meant to be and like who determines that. And I think that's a really important time to have those conversations with yourself. Yeah. And I feel like if I had read this story when I was older, I wouldn't have gotten as much from it as I do now. And even on the reread, because I had that previous experience, it made me better appreciate having a totally different one this time without missing out on the point. Okay. I think. So I think this story is for people that don't mind being lost for a little while in the story. There's parts of this book that are just nonsense. And like, there's some weird stuff. Like there's like a half of a chapter that's like writing how to make improvised explosive devices. So like there's weird stuff in there and tangents. And sometimes you don't know where the story's going and you're not entirely sure if he does either, the writer. And you just got to hang on for dear life, and you may not get all the answers at the end, but you'll get enough that it'll sit with you. It'll get you to really turn these ideas over in your head. And for me, that's the greatest gift that a story can give me is inspiration to consider their points later on my own, to just mull it over and really take from it what makes the most sense for me and add to my own perspective. And this story does that. Tom Robbins does that. And so I think anybody that's curious about just going on a weird and wild journey in the conversation of like our realities and how all this is put together.
Yeah, very cool. I did want to mention real quick because we've like been having such a blast talking. Yeah. So we decided, like you said already, tequila is prevalent in the story, but we decided with whiskey.
Whiskey,
you don't like tequila. Anyway.
Again, growing up in San Diego, I did plenty of tequila growing up. I have like a almost visceral reaction to the smell of tequila now.
Yes, it's very, also for me, it's a specific moment. It has to be very warm for me to be into tequila. So I got us the whiskey, and I did want to mention, I was trying to pick something, and this is the Belmont Farms Copper Kettle Whiskey, which is local there in Culpeper, Virginia. Nice. And then I was like, well, and the Tom Robbins was here in Virginia. Now the whiskey's from Virginia. So anyway, that's why I picked it.
Well, that's delicious. I've been very much enjoying it. Yeah. So thank you for picking a good one.
I try not to just go in for like just the cheapest Jack Daniels or whatever. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about you. Okay. And like put a spotlight on like what you do or anything you want to talk about. Oh, that's sure. Your thing.
I'm always juggling a lot of different stuff at the same time. I always call it like spinning plates, that I've always got a bunch of plates in the air that I'm spinning. It is how, for the longest time, I handled my ADHD was by having so much stuff happening at the same time that I didn't have a chance to like shut down and not be able to do anything and get stuck on the couch. Yeah. I found a more healthy balance between how busy I am, but I'm still very busy. I run Certified Crucial, which is it's a business I own with my business partner, Mars. And we are a merch company for specifically digital content creators, especially podcasters. Okay. And we help digital creators monetize their shows with direct monetization. So instead of relying on advertisers or other elements to, like we were talking about, choose your path for you, assign value to you, we really focus on allowing these creators a chance to assign their own value with creating ways to earn money from their audience directly. So we're big on not just merchandise, but also pre-orders. So instead of having to put up a bunch of money up front and hope that you'll sell stuff, you can actually set up a pre-order through our site. So there's no money up front. So these smaller creators that have a dedicated audience, an audience that will buy those shirts, you don't want to hope that you get the right sizes or, you know, or hope you pick the right type of merchandise and then end up with a bunch of stuff in your house collecting dust. So we consider that, and we create these avenues for creators to really monetize their audiences properly with crowdfunding and all sorts of stuff. Because again, being able to be the master of your own life and your own path is immensely important. In addition to that, I also run the Geeks Under the Influence network out of Richmond here, which is a podcast network and digital media company where we do all sorts of different stuff. We started as one podcast and developed into a whole network of geek and pop culture related shows mostly. I think we got like 12 or 13 shows at this point right now.
Amazing.
Some are active, some are inactive. Our main show, Geeks Under the Influence, the first one, sunsetted in 2023 after about 8 years. We were like, it's time. People's schedules were crazy. We were doing other shows and stuff. But we do some special live event stuff here and there. I've got 2 older shows that are coming out of hiatus, Smack My Pitch Up, that we're doing a slightly different version of it and rebranding it. We're leaning towards Pitch Measuring Contest is the name, but it's like a fan casting show where you talk about who you would cast as the director and the characters if you were to reboot or remake something.
Okay.
So we've had like Kevin Hart is Blade, but the jacket's the same size, so it's like the sleeves are over his hands and he can't grab the swords. Or John Waters doing a He-Man movie. We've done all sorts of fun, weird stuff. Or a Mario Brothers movie, but it's in the style of that movie Gator with Burt Reynolds from the 70s. So it's like, it's in the bayou and there's like meth heads and stuff. It's a whole thing. So very fun show. And then the show that I have with my wife called Deeply Upsetting, where we talk about like a lesser discussed news story and just riff on it a little bit. So it's nothing in this current climate. It's nothing that's actually important and relating to the fall of Western civilization.
I'm laughing because instead of crying.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like somebody decided to like paint their car like a duck or just some weird stuff. We've talked about the ethical cannibals getting mad at Armie Hammer when all of that stuff came out about him and being like, no, like he's giving us cannibals a bad name.
I didn't know about
that. And there's a beach in Texas that doll heads were washing up on regularly because of the currents or something. So they were collecting all these doll heads and the pictures are horrifying. There's like barnacles in their eyes and stuff. And they started selling them on eBay to raise money for this like environmental project that they were doing. And people were buying them because they're super haunted. Like they're the best gift for your weird friend that has maybe taxidermy or something. They would love that. So it's those kinds of stories, just the fun, weird ones that are a good time to discuss. So we're bringing that back. Our 10-year anniversary as a network is at the end of April.
Yay.
And we're also busy. We're trying to figure out what to do. We're going to, at the very least, have just like a night somewhere where people can come out and like celebrate. We might be doing a live show or a thing we do sometimes called Geekified, where we do like the Rocky Horror treatment to a movie. So we'll have like quizzes and contests and like little like call signs to do things at certain times. And it's a really good time. This time we want to do it with Demolition Man. So we've done Starship Troopers and Hackers before. So yeah, just go to GUIpodcast.com for all the Geeks Under the Influence stuff. Go to CertifiedCrucial.com for more info about our company and what we do with merchandise and monetization. And look me up on socials, Mike Bickett or Michael Bickett. I'm around. And I've been doing this for a while, so there's plenty of really embarrassing media out there of me doing just dumb stuff. So enjoy. Yeah.
This sincerely, honestly, has been lovely and fun, and I just so enjoyed getting to know you tonight, and thank you so much. And I loved the book, and it's been great.
Absolutely. This is who doesn't love talking about a thing they like?
Yeah.
So
same.
This has been also just really nice to be able to distill what I've gotten from this go round of reading the book, you know, and how different it is from the last time. It's one thing to put it together in your brain, but really this conversation, it's so nice to really verbalize it in a way to really solidify my thoughts.
You could write like a whole thesis on it.
Be careful. I've been known to do stuff like that. So I will get a PowerPoint together in like 2 seconds flat.
Good. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you for spending some time with me and my guest for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.